Good afternoon. สวัสดีครับ The topic for me today is, where is it now? Is trade and development in ASEAN integration. And thank you very much for the introduction. This topic has been discussed everywhere in Thailand now. And actually I was debating whether I should be speaking in Thai or in English in these sessions. And the organizer encouraged me to speak in English because we have some English speaker and there will be a Thai translation. The slides are in English, so that helps. I'll be covering about 5 subjects today. First, I'd like to introduce this idea about the trade and development in ASEAN first. It is not a new idea. Some old data that I'll show you, but I'd like to point out some of the information that we can get from these data. Then I'll talk about something that is more important, I feel, which is the future of this region. And I feel that is where ASEAN community, which will be announced by the end of this year, will find its place, a very important place, and that is the third topic. And then the fourth one will be those challenges and what we can do. You probably can't see this very well, but what is said here is the intra-ASEAN. It doesn't work too well here, is it? Because the monitor is in the front and the bouquet actually hid it from me. I'm sorry, it is not very clear there, but it shows that the top 10 item of ASEAN together export to the rest of the world. These top 10 items account for about 70% of our exports. This top 10 item, the top 3 items account for 50% all the way through this period. In fact, you can go further back for another 10 years. And the top 5 items, 3 of them will be okay, I can see it a bit better now. Electrical appliances, that's number 1. Number 2 is the mineral oil. Number 3 is machinery and equipment. They call precision machine, but the title there could be quite important. It's a nuclear reactor, but actually we are not trading any nuclear reactor, but we are exporting machineries. The fourth item will be, as you may know, the automotive products, right? The reason why I show this, but it's probably easier in the description, is that these are actually export of products that are not owned by any ASEAN countries. These are actually mostly foreign direct investment operations, right? The next slide is the imports of ASEAN. Again, these 3-4 industries fare the most important. More than 50% of our trade is dominated by these 3 major industries, namely the electrical appliances and equipments, precision machines, and the automotive sectors. These are the 3 main items. There are a lot of interregional trade also in these 3 items. So what does this mean? It means that our trade is actually governed very much by this industry, which in fact are mostly the investment from foreign countries, not ASEAN country itself. Now this gives us quite an important reminder that actually these are not the industry that ASEAN has control over, right? We have very little control over this investment. And when it disappears, it can disappear very, very quickly. We experience that in many countries. In Thailand, we have seen the departures of the textile industry, the garment industry, and of course, the electrical equipment industry. So is Malaysia. The next 5 years, we will see a lot more changes in this industry. In the next 10 years, it is going to be a totally different phenomenon in the ASEAN region. This is just a reminder that when we are talking about trade, we're talking about development, they are very different subjects. Trade represents a transaction. It go, in a trade transaction, it's a transaction by transaction. You sell and it's finished. You export, it's gone, finished. Unlike investment, where you actually position yourself for a few more years. But for ASEAN, the whole ASEAN setup was actually allow this industry to trade among itself very, very easily. We started the integration process in ASEAN in 1992 when we started to reduce the tariff among us. And the major industry that are trade using so-called the AFTA benefit is the automotive industry, and which benefited a lot from the AFTA arrangement. But these are the 3-4 industries that we can say at this moment in ASEAN, it is a single market operation. You can move products, intermediate products, and raw materials of these 3-4 industries among ASEAN countries with zero import duty already, right? In terms of the achievement of liberalization and a single market, these are the 3-4 industries I mentioned that has already accomplished that. Other industries, particularly the agricultural industry, we have much less of that. Okay. Now, so the point I'd like to make here is we have created ASEAN, the free trade area, for the benefit of a lot of foreign investment. It generates employment, but we cannot depend on this industry for a long time, for long-term development of the region and of the country in the region. We have to look for more sources of growth within the region going forward post-2015. This is the departure point. We are at the point in the history where a lot of change now are taking place, not only within the region, but outside of the region. This is the forecast given by the IMF in April 2015, early this year. It shows some very important information. We point it out to you. Indonesia is the largest ASEAN country. We all know that. Indonesia actually will be register a very rapid economic growth in the next few years, according to the forecast. Despite this political uncertainty in many countries in ASEAN, the economic forces is moving very rapidly in ASEAN. Okay, Indonesia stay the biggest ASEAN country in 2020, according to this forecast. Malaysia become the second largest ASEAN country, overtaking Thailand. Thailand is number 4 at the moment. Should be number 2 in 2014, and stay number 2 in 2015, and will be losing the position by 2020. Malaysia will become the second largest economy in ASEAN. In 2020, Thailand is not only the 3rd largest country, but Thailand becomes the 4th largest country after Philippines. Philippines is now registering 7-8% growth per annum. A lot of investment going there. Infrastructure is moving well. So without doing much, Thailand will recede from number 2 to number 4 in the next 5 years. Well, that is a very important message for the Thai. But all in all, ASEAN as a group, economy is going to grow at about 6 to 7% average, the total ASEAN growth in the next 5 years. Thailand slowed down, but many other countries actually growth rate increases. If you look at this number, the highest growth country in ASEAN actually will, in the next 5 years, will be Myanmar. Myanmar GDP stayed at 63 last year. It became 128, which is more than double in the next 5 years. The fastest growing ASEAN country, but growing from a small base, 63 billion US dollars. The second fastest growing country actually will be Cambodia, going from 17 to 27, Laos from 12 to 19, and actually Vietnam is also another fast growing country. All these are neighboring to Thailand. And they are moving very fast. The archipelagos in Indonesia and Philippines may be a little bit further away, but on the mainland, ASEAN, I think all the neighboring countries around Thailand are moving very, very fast, albeit they are quite small. But yet, the opportunity is enormous around here, right? And Philippines is now investing hectically in infrastructure. And they actually position themselves for another big round of growth going forward. So we can see that it's not surprising that Philippine economy will become the third largest economy in ASEAN. Philippines will have an election 2016. End of this year, Myanmar will have an election, general election in November. Thailand, hopefully, we will have a vote on Sunday. If that goes through, we have a referendum, which take another 3 months or so. Then we may have an election in the first quarter of next year. A lot of changes, political changes are taking place. Malaysia also included. There will be an election. So the political phenomenon in the region, it doesn't sound very stable, but the economic side, which actually is separate track of progress, is moving like a bullet train, very fast. A lot of momentum in this economy. People ask me why Philippines is moving so fast. Philippines is moving fast because, and in fact, Indonesia also, because they have been stagnant for the past 15 years. So this is basically a catch-up aspect, that's all. Actually, if they have a political stability, these two countries would have gone much further than this already. So this is a very big lesson among ASEAN countries. Political stability is very important for the economic growth. And in fact, from day one, when ASEAN established itself, the first thing ASEAN did is to say to each other that we shall not have war with each other. And that gives us stability. And that's where we can build a lot of economic growth and social development on that. So economics thrive only on a stable situation. And this is a living proof of that in all ASEAN countries. We are going through this political transition, but more and more you can see that the economic side slowly divorces itself from the political changes, except only for one particular factors, which is very much determine this relationship. It is the investment in infrastructure. With economic instability, with political instability, the damage that caused is a damage on the construction of infrastructure. Without good infrastructure, we got stagnant. Thailand, at this moment, we have exhausted our current infrastructure we have. For example, our airport is already at the capacity. So if you want to expand your tourism in sectors, trade sectors, you're stuck because the airport is not big enough. And unless we have some political stability to force more infrastructure, we will be stuck here for a long time. So this is something that we can see is evolving. Now with ASEAN integration, what does that mean? In fact, if you run, I did some of this work, ASEAN growth as a whole is very steady as a region, quite steady, except 1997 when we got a big hit. The whole region got hit. But otherwise, the growth of the whole region is very steady. Some country go down, some country will go up. So it is like one big group together. And one go down, another will go up. Some will benefit from the other falls, basically. So we're always supporting each other in that sense. Okay? So that is the resilience of the region. That's why ASEAN has to really work together as a group. Now let me take you forward a little bit into the future. ASEAN is declaring the ASEAN community, which consists of both economic, social, and political community, right, in one big chunk, right? By the end of this year, a lot of people have a lot of doubt whether we will be able to complete this. The press just interviewed me, you know, whether we can get the AAC ready by the end of this year. From the number I showed you in the earlier slide, AEC is already here. But what is important is what will you do with AEC going forward into the future? So what does the future look like? What are the future of ASEAN looks like? The future of ASEAN is not something that ASEAN themselves can determine. I have to check with you, okay? Since this is after lunch, and you may have still digesting some of the food. Who think that ASEAN GDP is more than 10% of global GDP? Please raise your hand. More than 10%. Who said it is more than 5%? More. Very good. 3% of global GDP. So ASEAN is not that big. What is big in ASEAN is not its GDP, but is actually its connections. You know, we in Asia, we understand this. We have good connections. The global economy is very volatile at the moment, going through a change. And this change is very fundamental change. We can see the stock market in the ASEAN region, in Asia as a whole, in fact, globally, is making a big adjustment at the moment, right? Behind it, the exchange rate system in the world is now going through a chaos situation, in a sense, because we do not know what happens. We can't even predict what will happen tomorrow to exchange rate. China devalued 4%. It's a havoc in the world. Okay? So what is going on there? Why does it end? What is going to come out when the dust actually settles? Whatever come out at the end, Asia as a group will become a much bigger group. I'll show you some number later on. I have to remember that one. Very important. Because Asia in the next 10 years is a very different Asia that we know from the past 10 years. A big change is coming. And so far, actually, Asia has not been able to express itself, its economic power in the world market. as good as it should. We'll see that happening. Integration of ASEAN going forward is not an option. It is not a choice. Because not that we have to integrate among ourselves our own requirement, our own needs. No. We have to integrate because other people want us to become more integrated. This is different. Because we do, in ASEAN country, we do have a lot of differences. In 10 ASEAN countries, we have all the major religions in the world. We have countries with ranges of economic growth, from the least developed country to the highest developed countries. Income per capita is so different. Size of the country so different. From 400,000 person a country to 225 million people. So these are the diversity that we have. Integrating the region is not easy, but we have no choice. We'll come to that also. Why? ASEAN community that will be declared by the end of this year will become the tenet, the platform for the integration of Asia going forward. And this is a 21st century architecture transpiring in front of us. And we are part of this exercise. A very significant change is taking place. And ASEAN, like it or not, is at the center of this change. I'll come to the reason why. ASEAN's strength and weaknesses. There are so many complaints about ASEAN being slow, ASEAN being informal, ASEAN have to go on consensus, ASEAN like to play golf and eat durians. They are not serious, right? All these also has its strength. ASEAN is informal because we have ranges of these differences in the region. We have to be very soft in moving together. And we have done that in the past 48 years. We have a lot of experiences. We know how to move. We know when to dance. We know when to shout. We know when to smile. We have that experience, and that is very important. People wonder why Asia, the biggest, most populated continent, are not really integrating well in the past. And one reason is there are too many biggies in Asia. You have China with 1.3 billion, you have India with 1.2 billion. Everybody is big. So when everybody is big, nobody is small. You can't be small. Right? So talk to each other. You need a totally different languages. Right? And this is what we call ASEAN speaks. Yeah. If you speak ASEAN, then it is okay. Okay? The informality, the consensus, the creation of this mechanism that we have in ASEAN, both in economic, social, cultural, and political security, look deep into it. There are a lot of value which will be very useful looking at this volatile world going forward in the future. Okay. Now, let me go quickly to these changes. I'm not going into details in here. But on the global side, let me cite 5 of them, which I think is very important, and we have to really pay more attention to this. The rise of Asia, as I mentioned. Let me give you pictures. Now, this is the share of global GDP by groups, right? ASEAN is the plus line, this one here, that I said actually will be moving toward 5%, right? In the year 2018-20, around there, right? The red line here is ASEAN plus 3, Japan, Korea, China, plus the 10 ASEAN, 13 countries. is moving up very quickly, right? And go beyond 2014 is still rise. This is the EU going down, and we have no question why EU is going down in terms of its share. It may have still, a positive growth rate, but it grows lower than the others. Then their share decline. Okay, so is the U.S. This line here, this is U.S. IMF actually forecasted that U.S. economy will be growing a bit faster, right? At this point of time, in hindsight, I think this forecast may have to be changed. But nevertheless, whether you can tune up the growth rate of U.S. or tune it down, the global economy is now going through a slowdown, right? If you look at some of the literatures on business cycle, then you find that we are probably at the beginning of a cycle, of a downward cycle now. It's going to take a few more years with it bottom out and going up again. In that process, when everybody's economy is not doing all that well, yeah, the Asian economy, which has not been doing all that well before, in particular with South Asia, right, will actually have a very high positive growth. Economies like Indonesia, Philippines, as in ASEAN that we see, will be growing very fast. In the forecast, 45% of global growth in the next 5 years, 45%, ladies and gentlemen, is coming from Asia in the next 5 years. Because you can't find growth elsewhere as fast. And even though the global slowdown is taking place, that proportion of the source of growth in the next 5 years may not change very much. Because Asia has more resilience. It can absorb a lot more shock compared to other economies which is moving very fast in the past few years. Okay? So I think this is an important message that you should take to consideration when you look at Asia and ASEAN going forward. Oh, sorry. Let me go back a bit. The second one is the direction of trade. I'll go into more details in there. Essentially, intra-ASEAN, intra-Asia trade actually is moving up. The global financial architecture, this is a huge subject that I said, this is one of the major changes that are taking place at the moment. Essentially, after the World War II, we have so-called the Bretton Woods system with IMF, the World Bank, as a key institution managing this global financial system. In the past 15 years, there are many financial crises, and each one getting bigger than the other. This one that we have right now started in 2008 from the hamburger crisis. We haven't seen the end of it yet. And at the end of it, we'll probably see a very new global financial architecture emerging. Unless we see that, we are still going to have more crises, which will hit us even harder until we give up the current system. After the crisis in 1997 in ASEAN, ASEAN made a very strong point about that. But at that time, ASEAN is only 2.5% of global GDP. Nobody listened. But the 2008 crisis, essentially about 10 years after the Asian crisis, is hitting the world in a very, very big way. And we have to reckon with that going forward. Unless we all, roll up the sleeve and really work on this, we're going to have a much bigger crisis upon us. And we don't want that to happen. The world has to do something about it. Digitization is another very big global phenomenon that actually upon us. It accelerates all the transaction. The acceleration of transaction make the risk that we have grow even bigger. It goes faster, everything goes faster. And when you drive faster, the risk is higher. right? Particularly when you don't have a break, okay? And this is a problem we have to temper with. Climate change has a very important implication on food supply. With global population increase, particularly in Asia. In fact, in population increase in Asia, Northeast Asia, Japan, Korea, China, their population growth is about 1% plus, okay? But the South Asian country is growing at, South Asian country is India particularly, Pakistan, Bangladesh. These three countries altogether at the moment is about 1.6 billion people. They're growing at 2.5% per year. 1 year, 1% is 16 million. 2% is 32 billion, a million people, okay? So it's a huge population growth in South Asia emerging. So what happened to these people? They have to eat, no? The food is now they're producing may not be sufficient. So where are they going to find food? That's one thing. The climate change is making the food production situation much more riskier. So the population combined with the climate change is going to be something that Asia as a group has to temper with. Unless we manage ourselves, because it's going to be 60% of total global population, yeah, in the region. That's why Asia has become so important in that particular aspect. So that is a major trend in the world. And when that happens, it is not only Asia that will be bearing the burden of this change, but the whole world will have to. In Asia, because of these changes, intra-Asia trade is going to increase, okay? Because there's no other direction. US and the European countries, which are the two major engines, the two major markets in the world, is slowing down. So where you're going to find market, you're going to be more within Asia, okay? Population dynamic, I just explained some of that. Middle class, in spite of these changes, right? In the next 10 years, 50% of global middle class going to be in Asia. Of course, China will be a major chunk of it, but India also will have a lot more rich people, middle class people growing, and the pattern of people changes. One of the features of the population dynamic is a lot of people are moving from the rural areas into the urban area. So we see more urban, more cities growing around the region in Asia in the next 5 to 10 years. Right? But as people move out from the rural areas, you take out the farm workers also, remember that, huh? Like what we have in Thailand now. Our average age of farmers is 57 and growing. No young people want to be a farmers. Because if you're a farmer, you can't ask for the hand of the daughters of anybody. You say, you're the farmers, huh? Go away, you know. My daughters deserve something better than that. So farmer is not a good profession. If not a good profession, then who is going to produce food for us to eat? People are migrating into the cities, leaving the farm. More people want to eat, less people want to produce. What will happen to the food situation? Another thing that has to change is the business model. Right? We stick very much to the traditional business model. We have a lot of state ownership, and that also has to be changed if we're going to move forward. Asian business culture. Those who are dealing with the Chinese understand it very well. Those who deal with the Indian people who understand this very well. But this is going to be the major business people you are going to deal with. Right? Like it or not, we may be educated in a very Western way, all legal bound and so forth, but there's an emergence of new sort of mixed business model between the Asian culture and the more modern culture. Some compromises, right? In fact, deep down in the Western culture, even though we are, legally correct and so forth, bounded by the rule and so forth, at the end of the day, there's some flexibility at the personal level, and that will still exist. But that in Asia, I think we are growing into that, but there will be some transition. So new business model will emerge. You have seen that. So new direction of trade and investment. As I said, that this is the future direction of trade, because as European countries and European countries here and the US, the NAFTA will become more consolidated into the free trade area of Americas more and more, because it's closer, right, and faster to move within that region. And EU is more consolidating the Eastern Europe, Western Europe phenomenon. So Asia will have to become more integrated, right? The volume of trade between the Northeast Asia, which is Japan, Korea, and China, and the rest, except for ASEAN, right? The rest of Asia is moving very rapidly, from about 50 billion to altogether about 2 trillion in 2000 and in this case 12. It's growing even faster now. Okay, so we can already see that is coming. Like it or not, it is coming. Not by chance, but it is by the structure of the global trade. What are they trading? You look deep into this, then you find these 3-4 products I mentioned in intra-ASEAN trade, right? Which is electrical goods, precision machines, automotive. Of course, there are some textile included in this group also now. Okay. Fuel, mineral fuel, petroleum is a must. There will be more trade, and actually, most of the import in the red here is the Chinese import of petroleum products, right, from the Middle East. But that continue on, right? The import, but the export side actually will be moving faster, and there will be more electronic goods and so forth. So there will be some consolidation of this market. But most important to us in ASEAN is that they will go through ASEAN. ASEAN become a junction of these goods. And in the past year and a half, you see more and more of this talk about the importance of this trade. In 2013, China made an announcement at the summit, ASEAN summit, with the +3. The one belt, one road. The belt, they meant the old Silk Road, which is something on the gutter, right? And the road is the marine road, which is connecting from the southern part of China all the way down to India and Africa. That is the one road, the marine Silk Road, they call. And the belt is the road going through here. Now this includes the road over here. Okay. Now let's look at the strategy of this country, which determine the direction of global, particularly the Asian economic development in the next 10 years. Right. What are the strategies that these countries are having at the moment? China, the one belt, one road, right? And they are actually establishing this Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank, right? China is putting in a lot of money into the bank to fund infrastructure. This one belt and one road initiative, right? So how will they do it? Let's see. But they are here all over the place at the moment. Japan has a 20 years plan to resize the population to its optimum population level. Japan has looked at its country and said that given the resources that they have, the optimum population, this is a concept which actually the population scientists, they come up with, the holding capacity of the land that they have. Optimum population in Japan is 90 million people, 90. Currently, Japan has 125 million, right? So in the course of the next 20, 30 years, but Japan is downsizing the population to 90, right? That will happen two ways. The aging population, that's one, but they also plan to migrate a lot of people outside. Where are they going? In fact, Japan has already made this project called the East-West Corridor, straddle across from Vietnam all the way to Myanmar and exit over there. Again, this is like connecting the Pacific Ocean and the Indian Ocean so that the goods can move across. Japan planned to relocate a lot of industries, manufacturing of electronics, auto parts, precision machines to Vietnam. Okay, so, and actually along this road, the East-West Corridor, you check this up, there are a lot of information on this, but what's really important is actually reflect the longer-term strategy of this country, of Japan. Korea is already following the two other Northeast Asian countries. They are migrating a lot of industry into Vietnam at the moment. Vietnam has 95 million people, right? It's a very populated country, and people are looking for jobs there. So there are a lot of potential high in that country. India Act East policy. Since the early part of this year, Prime Minister Modi has been going around many countries, particularly Japan, Korea, and China, to basically sell projects, right? Investment project come and invest in India. At the same time, India is making many roads to connect India with Myanmar, with ASEAN, with Thailand, right? So India is on the other side. They say they are not only look east, but they act east already. So they act on it already, not just talk like us. So when the Northeast Asian countries is looking west, the Indian is looking east, ASEAN is fait accompli, a meeting point, right? So this is what is going to happen, right, in the next course of the years. There was a study looking at all the regional arrangement that will support the integration of Asia. And you can see there are so many circles, right? But among all of this, the key, the most important infrastructure on the soft side, right, to integrate Asia is actually ASEAN. There are many studies that say that, well, ASEAN can't, because it's too big a job for ASEAN. But in fact, ASEAN has one very important characteristic, which I mentioned before. ASEAN is number one, neutral. Number two, ASEAN is non-threatening. We never threaten anybody. And we are not a threat to anybody. With 3% GDP, we cannot threat the country with 14% GDP, a share of global GDP, or threaten the country with, we have 624 million people. We can't threaten India with 1.2 billion, right? So we are quite harmless. And most important of all, is ASEAN is not that unified. That is our strength, like it or not, because we are so different. So in ASEAN, we have very diverse set of opinions about things. But that becomes the strength. We can talk to anybody. We can talk to the big country. We can talk to the small country. Because we have all kinds of options. Minister Ali Alatas once said that this is our strength in ASEAN. When we want to talk tough, we send Malaysian Prime Minister, then Mahathir Mohamad. We want to talk soft, we send the Thai Prime Minister. So You want soft or you want strong, we all have the options, right? That's why ASEAN become a place where people are willing to talk. Next door from us here, there is a talk about North Korea, yeah? You've seen that sign, right? Where can you meet to talk about North Korea if the 6 parties cannot talk about it? Talk in ASEAN. ASEAN has become a subject that are taken up by the foreign ministers under the ARF, the ASEAN Regional Forum, for many years. This is a place where you meet and talk. Now, I'd like to explain this a little bit because it is not something that you can write it up and you can see it in number. But the strength of ASEAN is, in fact, the fact that we are a convener of many forums, right? The most important forum right now is the East Asian Summit, EAS. Right? EAS has 18 leaders come to the meeting. Right? 10 ASEAN countries. Then we have Japan, Korea, China, which is +3. Then we have Australia, New Zealand, India, the other plus another 3, the 16. And we have Russia and we have the US. The only party in the world that are left out from this is the EU. Right? Otherwise, you have all the key players in Asia in here already. Right? It has been meeting since 2005. The leaders come and meet, and the press are complaining. There's no news, you know. The statement is very bland, right? But you know what is the significance of this, right? It is the place where all the leaders have a chance to meet, not only on the meeting room, but on the site. And this is where it is important to be able to be in this meeting. Not for the meeting itself, probably, to make a statement of 5 minutes or 10 minutes, but the side talk is very important. This is where you can meet face-to-face with many, many leaders. You can organize it as a group or as an individual. And that is where the value of this particular forum. Right now, even China, who want to convene a summit, which has more countries than just Japan, Korea, and China, find it very difficult to organize one. Because physically it is impossible. Because right now there are many forums in the world that leaders have to attend. The APEC summit, ASEAN summit, it takes up their time. They have no free time. So it is very difficult to lock in. That makes the forum that exists become very powerful, you see. It becomes a scarce commodity in this world of many, many forums, right? Therefore, we have to make use of what we are good at, what we already have. Make the use of this particular opportunity, the mechanism that I already have. Not that we are good at it, but we do have something to offer. Because they look at ASEAN and say, we do not have this, we do not have that. That's fine. Now, the priority for the future on the external side, the way I see it is we have to really look into some of these elements. The trade and investment element. It is coming, and we have to really look at how we can integrate trade and investment in Asia in a much more substantive manner. Right now we have the RCEP, the ASEAN, the Asia Regional Comprehensive Partnership, Economic Partnership, which is still negotiating and should be end by the end this year, in one form or the other. It is not easy. I was involved at the beginning, and there are so many differences. The key thing here is it's a combination of 5 FTA. ASEAN China, ASEAN Japan, ASEAN Korea, ASEAN India, ASEAN Australia, New Zealand. There are 5 FTA. You combine them to make an ASEAN, the Asia Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. When ASEAN negotiated the ASEAN-China FTA in 2001, actually we started. It was completed in 2003 like that. Whatever ASEAN asks, China said no problem. Because from the from China point of view, ASEAN is tiny. And China is right. We are only a tiny part, tiny player. Therefore, the ASEAN-China FTA is like that, very fast. In the RCEP, China has to offer what they offer to ASEAN to other countries. Offer this to Japan. Offer this to India. Well, that is a totally different game, isn't it? Therefore, RCEP is not that easy to negotiate. Because when we have an individual bilateral between ASEAN and these countries, the context is one thing. Now, in a broader context, things look different. Therefore, they have to come up with more detailed mechanism in order for this to work. But nonetheless, we already have this platform to play with. It may not work 100%, but we already have the existing 5 FTA that support the trade and investment in the ASEAN, in the Asian region. Yeah? So that's number one. We need to work more on this, but we have to dig deeper into certain sector. We are going to that later on. Yeah? The second area is financial cooperation. Like it or not, with 38% of global GDP, Asia will have 38% of global GDP in the year 2020. But Asia doesn't have key or no control over the global exchange rate and financial system. How can that be possible? Therefore, some recognition of the role of Asia has to be given, the role to play in that. Remember the GDP number I gave you earlier on? It's all in US dollars. Huh? Everything is quoted in US dollars. Oil price US dollars, gold price US dollars. But when US dollars change, and it has to change, because of the QE is going to due next year, where can you get this money from to pay back this loan? Right? Unless there's some change there in the exchange rate system, I don't think the world can really go on this way. Yeah? Renminbi is trying to exert more role going forward, and it will happen. It will happen, okay? And we have to really make sure that it happens in a smooth way, that we all understand how it goes and have some control over this, or else it will be chaotic. They're just 4% exchange rate without telling anybody. Maybe that may not be the right thing to do. Maybe we have to really work a little bit closer together to make this transition process a little bit smoother, isn't it? After all, we do have an ASEAN Plus 3 arrangement, as I mentioned in here. The ASEAN Plus 3, when I was with the ASEAN Secretariat, I started the ASEAN Finance Forum. I did the Chiang Mai Initiative in 1999, which culminated in a signing in the year 2000, right? Now it's a 240 billion swap arrangement, which can support ASEAN countries and Asian countries in a shortfall. Yeah? But there are much more than that in the ASEAN Plus 3 finance. When it started, the finance minister meet and the central bank governor meet on the side. Different forums, but they talk to each other through the ASEAN Secretariat. I was with the Secretariat then. I was to the shuttle. They do not want to see to be together. And that is very sensitive, huh? I tell you. It is only in 2013, right? After 20 years, that now decided that the central bank governor and the ASEAN finance ministers now sit together in one forum. It's a major change. And the world going forward, we need that. It has to be together. And this is happening in the European community and in Asia. And we see this in the ASEAN Plus 3. That's why this forum, the ASEAN Plus 3 Finance and Central Bank Governor Forum, is going to be a very important forum that balance the movement of the renminbi into the global arena. Food security, I mentioned this many times in passing, in climate change, in population change. We can't really ignore a very basic element of food. It looks simple, but when you come down to it, is it's highly politicized for the word food. In Thailand, rice, which is the key grains, is a strategic commodity. In fact, to trade rice, we have to get permission from the Minister of Defense because it is a strategic commodity, right? Food security will happen, and the country that can produce food and the country that will need food will be in a different place, and more so in the future. You all know that world trade in food is the most restrictive product, and it actually costs many lives in a negotiation in the WTO round when you want to open up the agricultural sector. In ASEAN, when we started the ASEAN Free Trade Area, agriculture and food are not included because it's so sensitive. We actually included in 1995 after we started the Free Trade Area the negotiation, and that calmed down and we bring in agricultural sector. Going forward in Asia, we have no option but to really have the food market more liberalized, or else there will be a lot of problems, right? Situation like we see at the moment, which will transpire in the next 4 or 5 years. If this 100 years ago, right, it means war already. You see war already. This country that have food deficit will start to move the troop into the country that have food surplus, right? If it's 100 years ago, it is the movement of troops. But this is 100 years later. What are you going to move? You don't have to move anything. You just make the trade regime more open, and that will take care of it. And unless we can manage that, we're going to have some kind of war also. Different kinds of war, but very, very taxing. Food is sensitive. Connectivity. Linking the two oceans is something that will have to happen one way or the other, right? And this will happen in the next few years in different fashions. We may not see. Thailand was thinking of the Grak Canal, and at the National Reform Council, we talk about that possibility again also. At this point of time in the history, the canal play a very different role from it would have been 50 years ago. 50 years ago, the canal was conceived then, but there are a lot of rejection. At that point of time also, Singapore became a very important port for many countries, particularly England, right, the UK. And to have another canal to compete with Singapore would take away a lot of trade from Singapore, and that become a problem. But now the Malacca Channel is full capacity already. It will not be able to sustain more trade going forward in the future. So what can you do? So there are a lot of pressure now to have a new route. And that's why China wants this one belt and one road very much, because of the need for the transportation. And basically, if it happens, it benefits everybody. And we should actually work on this together. This is a new concept, this connectivity concept. We actually can connect with each other, but there's a but here, a but in the brain of many of us in ASEAN, a but that this is my country and that is your country. Right? We do not divorce that from the fact that economically we have been trading with each other for a long, long time. So unless we change this attitude, we're going to have more problems going forward. So this connectivity of mind also is also important. Yeah? External factors. Internal factors, trade development in ASEAN it has to move a lot faster than what we have now. We have the idea of the national, the ASEAN single window. It has been there for many years now, but to implement it, it still takes time. We need to really push this because there'll be a lot more trade, particularly in Thailand case. Thailand has borders with more countries than any other ASEAN countries on the land side, right? We have more land borders with anybody. So we need to really move this very fast because our border trade is now growing at a much faster rate than the trade with anybody else in the world. The rate of growth, the base is small, but the rate is high, okay? And the key reason is because all the neighboring countries of Thailand are growing very fast. And they need to consume more product, more materials from Thailand. So if you have more trade, they will grow and Thailand will also grow. So more trade actually is coming through. Trade from China is coming through also. We have the transit trade through the, in 2014, the number I have, 150 billion baht of transit trade through the border points, right? Through the Malaysian border, to the Laos border, Cambodian borders, and Myanmar borders, to other countries. From Myanmar to India, from Laos, Cambodia to Vietnam to China, and from Malaysia to Singapore, and the other countries. So it's growing fast also, okay? So we have to really move forward to facilitate this and make the ASEAN single window concept work. And this is quite, the internal one is something that is more urgent. The financial cooperation with more trade among ASEAN countries, we do need to have a more secure payment system and exchange rate among us, isn't it? Now we depend very much on the US dollars, which is very unstable. We have to really think of what kind of currency system that we want to have among ourselves. So there are some studies talking about some basket of currency, US dollars, EU, yen, renminbi, for example, right? To have a basket. That will help us going forward. And this is quite urgent because we need this to facilitate our trade. Food security, ASEAN as a group is a food surplus country, and we have a potential to really expand that. So the food problem that we see will be emerging from the Northeast Asia, particularly in China, and then the South Asia. After all, they are actually our trading partner in food already, and this can be expanded, and it is something that is helping them and also helping us. Connectivity, aside from the connectivity outside, connecting among ASEAN countries is also very important, particularly on this mainland area. So these are the four subjects which I think both at the external side and the internal side have to be in sync with each other, and they are quite urgent, to really get the system ready in the next few years. Aside from, ASEAN has now come up with this 14 priority sectors. We start from 12, and we're going to announce 2 other, which is this connectivity issue as a sector, and then another sectors on services become 14 priority sectors. The 14 sectors will include, in agriculture, we have agro-processing, we have rubber and rubber product, wood products, and fisheries. And then we have manufacturing, we have automotive sectors, textile and garment, electrical goods, electrical machineries, and we have petrochemical products, I think. So that's our 8. And then we have healthcare, we have air transport, we have healthcare services already in there. But we have connectivity, logistic industry, and then we have These are the basically 14 sectors. But there are a few other sectors which I think are growing very, very fast, and we should not ignore them. And these are the retail and wholesale trade sectors. This sector happens to be the core of most economy. It shares about 12% in ASEAN GDP. For Thailand, it shares about 15%, 15 to 16%. It's growing on the average about 10% per annum, and growing much faster going forward, particularly with the countries around us. Real estate is another sector that are moving very fast with the connectivity. The financial service sectors is about 7.7% of GDP at the moment, and will be growing at about 7% going forward. No, sorry, 8 to 10% going forward. Business service also moving fast. Educational service is something we need the most. Thailand is going through a reform, and many countries is going through a reform process where the school actually will be taken out very much from the hand of the government into the private sectors more and more. And so is the healthcare sector, which is actually moving on already, with the insurance sectors moving in there also. But these are the sectors that I think will have a lot of potential going forward in ASEAN, and need a special care to nurture so that this sector can position itself firmly in the growth of Asia as a bigger growth. Right? Unless we position ourselves well in this sector, we might lose them, right, to the big players. Challenges, we have limited articulation of ASEAN benefit. The key problem of ASEAN is we actually have a mindset that are not too positive with each other, because we are competing all our lifetime, right? And we have a history book which we read that do not really encourage very much cooperation. So we need to really change the mindset. And this is what I'm trying to say here is the benefit of ASEAN is much, much bigger, and we have to really work together. But right now, the articulation of this benefit are not that common. Unless we really work together, we are not going to get all the gain we think we will get from ASEAN going forward. All the countries. And we cannot do this by ourselves. Any single country in ASEAN cannot do this. So we have to work together. We have to articulate this. What are the benefits to us, to each country? And what are the benefits to others also? And the second point is something very important. We do not know how much benefit we are generating for China, for Japan, for Korea, for India, and for other countries when we work, when we have an integrated sector. We only look at what we gain, but actually to negotiate and to move forward, we have to look a bit broader than that. Unfortunately, there are very, very limited, or in fact, non-existing research that look at this particular issue. That how much are other gain from ASEAN? We don't know that. But if you look deeper in each industry, you find. I'll take, for example, like the electronic sectors. We know that the value added of the electronic sectors in ASEAN is about 15% at the most. 10% maybe. Hard disk maybe only 5%. So where are these benefits? Where do they fall? How can we get more of that? And that is something we have to really study and understand, and then position ourselves to gain more of this. The lack of sufficient policy research, and together with the first one, we do not really think of ASEAN together as a group, as an industry, as a group, and articulate this benefit to the group and work together as a group. Most ASEAN industry, I find, are competing with each other rather than working together to compete in another market. And maybe ASEAN have to really, private sector in particular, have to think a little bit more together this way. The role of private sector is very important because economic growth is generated by the private sector, not by the government. The government laid down the foundation. But the actor, the soldiers, are the people, the businessmen themselves. They should have a say of what they want, not the government. Right now, what we do in ASEAN, under the ASEAN Economic Community, 458 measures are being concocted among the government offices, ready to do many things. But the application of these 458 measures will be done by the private sector. Does the private sector know what happens? The answer is no, they don't, right? Not yet. But they have to really understand what they want. So, or else the work of the government officers become not too useful. Yeah? The other element there is all these measures, the rules and regulations that we talked about, that will be the core that will hang the Asia together. In ASEAN, we have a problem in the implementation because we have the ASEAN Dispute Settlement Mechanism, which was established in 1996 when I was still working at the ASEAN Secretariat. Up until today, not one single case has been brought through the ASEAN Dispute Settlement Mechanism. Are we so transparent that there is no dispute among us? The answer is no. But why does it doesn't work? It doesn't work because nobody wants to use it. We have to ask ourselves why. And unless the ADSM work, then we will not be able to get all this law implemented. We need a secretariat which is more coordinated, help the coordination better. Okay, they say my time is up. Let me go to the last one. What should we do? Basically, it's basic. I have already mentioned all this, right? ASEAN should have a strategic institute to study more about what ASEAN could do and get the public sector, the press and so forth to understand this a little bit better, what we are doing in ASEAN. What are the benefits, right? We have to jointly develop the future of ASEAN between the private sector, the government sectors, and the social organizations. Right now, we do not have a common vision that are developed by all of this. Most of the ASEAN vision, including the one we can announce at the end of this year, are developed essentially by the government. They consult with some private sector, but not in a comprehensive way that invite the people from different walks of life to participate. We have to develop a new way to fund ASEAN Secretariat. So ASEAN Secretariat can, help coordinate many of these projects and get, the desired output for ASEAN integration into play, and help ASEAN coordinate among ASEAN itself and coordinate between ASEAN and our dialogue partner with China, with Japan, with Korea, India, and so forth. So those are the three last points I leave with you. I understand there are a lot of researchers in the room, some businessmen, but actually this message is more for the researchers, because if you want to get ASEAN to really work, we have to think right. To think right, we need to have better analysis of information, understand where we are going, right? We don't have that. I don't think we can walk in the right directions. So going forward, we need much more research, understand ASEAN a little bit better. So I leave my talk at that. Thank you very much for your attention.